Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of the International Radio Report with Sheldon and Gilles. We thank you for checking out our special edition. If you are a regular listener to the International Radio Report on Sunday mornings at 10:30 Eastern, 14:30 UTC, last week's show, we just ran out of time. A lot of
Oh yeah.
stories to cover, lots of things going on in radio, so we figured we would do a YouTube special edition for you. We are recording this on Tuesday, August the 20th, and going to try and squeeze in some of the stories we couldn't get to on Sunday, plus some other stuff that we thought we'd just talk about, fill you in, do a couple little publicity items for you, how to get in touch with us, to get some sample copies of our club bulletins, how to check out Gilles' YouTube channel for equipment reviews and other things radio related. So thanks again for joining us, and I guess we'll get right to it by covering a couple stories that we were hoping to cover on our Sunday show, but didn't get to. So, Gilles, I guess you can start things off. We have a story about the Voice of America.
Yep, the Voice of America station in the Commonwealth of the North Marianas Islands announces closure. This is by Kimberley B. ESMORES, Saipan Tribune via the Shortwave Listening Post. The U.S. Agency for Global Media has announced that it will be closing its Robert E. Camosa transmitter station in the CNMI, which is Commonwealth of the North Marianas Islands. After decades in operation, the station broadcasts the Voice of America transmission to Asia. In a letter from the U.S. AGM, William S. Martin, Director of Operations and Stations Division, a big change is taking place at the U.S. Agency for Global Media's Robert E. Camosa transmitting station. The change is a discontinuation of all shortwave radio transmissions at our Saipan and Tinian sites, the first step in closing the station, he said. According to Martin, on June 26, the USAGM, an independent federal agency that oversees the Voice of America, Radio Free Asia, and other U.S.-funded international civilian broadcasters, announced it was closing the transmitter site and two shortwave radio transmission sites on the Saipan and Tinian. Martin explains that the USAGM operates the Saipan and Tinian sites to broadcast multi-language radio programming from Radio Free Asia and Voice of America into the East Asia region. Broadcast operations on the islands go back many decades, with the U.S. government building its first transmitting station in Saipan almost immediately after the U.S. entered World War II in December in 1941. While shortwave radio was an effective and popular way for people in media-deprived countries to access international news and information during World War II and the Cold War, Martin says shortwave use has fallen dramatically almost everywhere since the invention of the Internet and the fall of the Soviet Union in the 1990s. As audiences turn to other media and people increasingly access news and information from digital and other platforms, many international broadcasters that were once active on shortwave have reduced or completely eliminated their shortwave operations altogether. Further, Martin said shortwave broadcasting is increasingly expensive, especially compared to other platforms that are more popular with global audiences. USAGM and the other broadcasters have sought to balance maintaining costly legacy shortwave operations with investing in other platforms that reach much larger audiences, he said. So Martin said the challenge worsened when Category 5 Super Typhoon Yutu ravaged the CNMI in October 2018, and the station's transmission infrastructure was destroyed. USAGM sought to restore the station's transmission capabilities, but budgetary constraints limited efforts to restore its full functionality. Ultimately, Martin says USAGM is not abandoning shortwave, but it is reducing broadcasts in places with no discernible shortwave audience and consolidating its global transmission network. So, lots of little things in there that, you could agree or disagree. One thing they are saying, lack of audience. We see it all the time when we transmit a radio signal, unless somebody writes in. we don't really know who's out there listening. And, maybe there's more than they think, but since they're not getting any feedback, they are assuming maybe that there's less than there's in reality. The other thing I don't like with this is the fact that, yeah, okay, you're reducing transmission or closing transmitting stations. But we've got to remember that, especially in certain places of the world, like in many countries in Asia, are in turmoil. And yeah, it's nice to have digital and internet, but that is easy to shut down when governments don't like what's happening. And that's also something they're not thinking of. We are kind of assuming here that it's always working, because when nothing bad's happening, yeah, it is working, and if it's more effective maybe sometimes to have an internet stream or something, or even some of these programmings are probably on some FM outlets, maybe in parts of in parts of Asia, basically. But still, it's like the BBC cutting down. I think it's a little short-sighted. You're not realizing the importance of these transmitting stations. And if you close them down and remove the equipment, you're never going to build that up, because it's going to cost a fortune. And they are talking a lot about money here, which is always something I hate about giving news. Stop thinking about it as a dollar amount. Think about it as all the news and information you're giving to people that might not be able in any other way to receive them.
Yeah, there's, like you said, there's a lot of items in that story that are hard to prove.
Yeah.
The audience numbers are estimated. Particularly people who are accessing these broadcasts may just not even have the ability to put letters together and send them off. If they're not on internet, they're not going to email the radio station and say, yes, we're listening to your broadcast. That's where a lot of this stuff is being taken for granted, that, oh, everybody's out there on the internet. The internet is everywhere, and people can get to these digital tools very easily. Some people can, not everybody. And, one of the things we're going to talk about in the program later on is all these new radios that are coming out.
Yep.
Now, why would they be making all of these radios if people weren't buying them and people weren't using them? And they're radios that have shortwave on them. So they've thought enough, in a world where we're seeing so many of these stations disappear because, quote unquote, nobody's listening. Well, who's buying the radios? And if they're buying them, what are they listening to? So again, a lot of assumption. Maybe, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing here. I think, the audience research, if they're even doing audience research, should know that all these pieces of equipment are being put out there on the market. And according to the companies, people are buying them. So you can't just blanketly say that, oh, everybody's going to the internet, so we're cutting out these services. I think that's where you said money becomes the factor. We're seeing it happening in AM transmitter sites. Land is becoming extremely valuable for development, for housing, for manufacturing plants, what have you. And I think the radio companies and businesses that are holding on to these properties are seeing more value in closing the radio stations down and getting this land sold to someone or getting the lease eliminated. I think maybe we're seeing some of that thrown into the mix here. And the losers in all of it are the people who are out there listening on radios and not able to access the tools that so many people have. Countries in turmoil, as you said as well. You've got gatekeepers on all of these services like the internet and local FM radio outlets. They can be shut down. We have stories almost every week of stations being shut down. Countries that don't like what a foreign country is saying on their FM band, well, let's just remove their license and don't let them broadcast to the people. It's really obvious that this sort of thing is going on out there. And it just seems that there's too much assumption on the part of the broadcasters.
When we look at this, there's a lot of talk about China and a lot of talk about trying to balance out China's output. But I tell you, you're closing transmitter sites for some of the voices, like Radio Free Asia, for example. And the BBC does the same thing on its side with reducing shortwave. Yet, there's a staggering amount of transmissions coming out of China every day. China seems to understand that let's be out there, it's important. Yet, everybody else seems to think, no, we don't really need that anymore. Interesting.
If you scan across the bands, if you go online on some of the online SDRs in different parts of the world and check the number of transmissions coming out of China, the number of transmitters that they're using, most of these radios that are being manufactured in China. And China is the one with probably the most shortwave radio transmitters on the air.
Yep.
So there's a correlation there, I think. They know that people are out there. They know that people are consuming radio, using a radio. So I think those two are going hand in hand. It just doesn't make any sense for companies to be making, literally tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of radios and putting them out there on the market if they don't know that there's somebody out there to buy them.
It's definitely interesting. And I don't know. I think we're not thinking all of the aspect of being out there and having a voice.
Yeah. We were seeing some stories online too about this closure that it had been talked about for quite a while. Even there were some sort of secret inside emails that flew back and forth about this closure before even some of the people in the Voice of America even knew anything about it, or in particular the USAGM that didn't know what was going on. So yeah, it's controversial, I guess, in some cases, and then others, particularly in the United States, how many people even know of the general public that these transmissions are out there and that money's being spent on them. So yeah, it's a very, very complicated scene.
And there's always that talk of, why should we pay to broadcast to other countries?
Right.
It always comes back. And, it's just not understanding that maybe it's important to have an American voice on the air around the world, or a British voice around the air around the world, and unfortunately, doesn't seem to go through. But yeah, and there's other closures also that are kind of being talked about. We have transmitters in Africa, like Sao Tome and things like that are maybe also on the chopping block.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the end of it. I think there's going to be more deleting of services and sadly some tear down of transmitter sites. And like you said, once they're down, they're not going back up again. That's the sad part. That if somebody does wake up and realize, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Well, it's too late after you've taken everything down. On the other side of the coin, though, we have a story of something going up and starting up, and in a very odd place, in that not much has been happening in the way of additions to the long wave band. Some of you may not even know about the long wave band. These are stations that exist on a frequency range down below the medium wave frequencies, down from 100 to 260, 270 kilohertz. Not really popular in North America for broadcasting, at least. We do have beacons and things like that. But broadcasting overseas, Europe and Africa in particular, it was something that was extremely popular. There were a lot of stations with a lot of high power that were able to cover wide expanses of territory. Suddenly there was a big movement, though, to shut a lot of these stations down. And right now there's very few stations left on the long wave band. But this story, which has come from an organization called Arctic Radio 252 on their webpage, which you can find at arcticradio.net. The return of long-wave radio. This is Arctic Radio 252 kilohertz long-wave. Arctic Radio started as a project in the spring of 2024, With the decline in long-wave broadcasts, it was mostly with nostalgia the project was born, but the need for an independent Arctic-based radio station was recognized. Multi-language programming in English, Finnish, and various Finnish or northern Scandinavian languages in the Sami languages is catering to the people who live in the high Arctic area. The station goes on to say, we will begin broadcasting later this year from Inari in northern Finland with 1 kilowatt. We hope to slowly upgrade the power as time goes on. Our goal is a dedicated long-wave station that will cover most of the Arctic region in the future. 252 kilohertz was the former home of Finland's YLE long-wave station from Lahti, which was switched off in 1993. A commonly asked question is why 252 kilohertz? The short answer is Finland only has 252 kilohertz allocated under the GE75 International Telecommunications Union plan. We are aware of the power of Algeria, also on 252 kilohertz, that may hinder reception of our station further south, but we are hopeful in future that we may be granted a clear channel by the ITU. So this is kind of exciting news for people, DXers in particular, but people in general in the Arctic who, maybe only have a limited choice of stations that they can hear over the radio. It's kind of nice to see something popping back up onto longwave. They do mention this potential problem as you get further south with interference from Algeria. I think Algeria is one of those megawatt transmitting sites.
Very powerful.
So they did some testing already. I was under the impression they were on already at first, so I was looking around on some online SDRs and couldn't hear anything, and then realized that they did a bit of testing, but their target is to get on a little bit later. So we'll keep an ear out for this.
Yep,
I think it'll be interesting.
definitely.
They are going to include some English, which will be nice. Unless you live in North America, somewhere on the coast or in the northern regions, East Coast or northern regions, 252, anything on longwave is difficult unless you're in a very quiet location. But it'll be something to shoot for and something to listen to once they do get things up and running. So nice to hear that for Arctic Radio 252 out of Finland. You can check their website, arcticradio.net, and I'm sure they'll keep you up to date on their progress there.
Talking about a station that is activating an old frequency from Finland, there's also a station that is going to be reactivated from Guatemala. I saw in the Glenn Hauser's I.O. group that he's received a email from the owner of Radio Verdad that used to be on a very odd frequency of 4055 kilohertz in shortwave. They had decided to do other things, go satellite and local FM. And finally, they said, you know what? It doesn't work the way we planned. And they're waiting for a transmitter that will be a 1200-watt transmitter. It was made in Germany. It's presently in the United States for being tuned to be transmitting on 4055. And apparently, they're hoping to come back on the air on shortwave on that frequency in the next couple of months.
Oh, that's nice to hear. We used to pick that station up
Yeah.
fairly well. Transmitter was in rough shape, so it wasn't an easy catch in noisy conditions. But they're kind of sitting out there on an odd frequency out of the normal broadcast bands. So that'll be something to keep checking on for 4055 kilohertz out of Guatemala.
Yep.
And that it is a religious
station, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember them having some pretty nice music and stuff from time to time on there as well. So we'll keep you up to date if we hear any more about them reactivating on 4055 kilohertz. So other things that are going on, we talked about some of the shutdown of stations coming up or that have already happened. One in Canada, 900 kilohertz, CHML in Hamilton, Ontario. That's a station that was on the air for getting close to a century. And just out of nowhere, the plug was pulled, station went off the air, gone, history. Everybody was gone, staff is gone, frequency's gone, just nothing there. Of course, that piques the interest of medium wave DXers. And I know our friend Gilles Michaud in Laval, Quebec, does a lot of medium wave DXing using a remote SDR. Because his home location is extremely noisy. So he has one just a little bit off the island of Montreal in a quiet area. And he's been checking out the frequency of 900, as of many other DXers. I've done some checking here as well in my location. And so far, the interesting thing about 900 is CHML was basically a clear channel 50 kilowatt signal on that frequency. And if you look up the listings of stations, other stations on 900 kilohertz, they're low powered, and some of them are daytime, higher power, nighttime, really low power, so as not to interfere with CHML when they were on. So now it's kind of a wide open grab bag of possibilities on that frequency. I have heard 4 stations so far. I know Gilles has mentioned a number, the same ones that he's been hearing. There are 2 in New York State, one in Watervliet, New York, which is WABY, and they have a classic rock format. There's the second one in New York State is also classic rock, WBRV in Boonville, New York, and they ID as the Blizzard. They have an FM simulcast as well, and they don't use the AM frequency ID very often. They're referring to their FM frequency. But those are 2 in New York State. I've had one in Philadelphia called WURD, and it is an urban talk station. Kind of interesting. I listened to it for a little bit, and that is on 900. And the 4th one is an oldies station out of Nashua, New Hampshire, WGHM in Nashua, New Hampshire, and they also simulcast another station. I think it's on 1250 out of Manchester, New Hampshire. So those that are from the Northeast, at least, those are 4 target stations you might want to be looking for. If you're located elsewhere in North America, there are other stations as well. A really easy way to find a list of stations that are on a particular frequency is go to Wikipedia. For this one example, type in 900 AM on a search in Wikipedia. A page will come up listing all of the different stations that can be heard on 900, not just in the United States or Canada, but other countries as well. And they give you information. You can click on the links to the station's own pages. You can find out, it shows you what power they're using daytime and nighttime. So a lot of information just on the Wikipedia page for each frequency. So you could start with 900 because it's a hot spot to check out right now. And I find that source of information really, really handy. Yeah. There is 2 clubs, International Radio Club of America and the National Radio Club. Both of those are specialists in medium wave DXing. You can look both of those up online, and they have club memberships. They have electronic newsletters, and they keep you up to date on what's going on medium wave, on AM stations. In fact, I just ordered, I think it's sitting waiting for me at the post office, actually, the new National Radio Club AM log. It's a hard copy publication of all of the stations in North America on each of the AM frequencies with all the detailed information. You even have addresses if you want to send QSL reception reports for QSL cards. They have the information on the transmitter power. They have the information on the format. They also tell you if a station is simulcasting, if they have an FM relay, because some of the stations you'll hear the ID simply with the FM station call sign or the slogan, like the one I mentioned that IDs is the Blizzard. So it's a really great source of information. It's available through the National Radio Club. It is a hard copy, loose leaf. It's a 3-hole punched. You can put nicely into a binder, and the latest edition is just out, so you can order it through the National Radio Club.
I did tune a little bit 900 on my Texan S2200X receiver because it has this nice rotatable antenna on top for a medium wave. I didn't ID officially, but I guess you maybe have answered the station that I've actually received, which was a talk station. It was coming in and out, but mostly a talk station. I did hear a little bit of music in the background, but when I tried, I think it was Monday night, that talk station was the one that was kind of coming through the clearest on 900.
Yeah, more than likely. I think Jill Michaud told me that that was the dominant station that he was hearing was WURD in Philadelphia. The interesting thing is some of these stations appear to be cheating on their nighttime power. I guess they figure maybe, the FCC is not paying as much attention to AM. And so some of these stations that are supposed to dramatically reduce their power at nighttime are not doing that. And that's why we're hearing some of these other stations that have listed extremely low power at night. But I don't think the stations we're hearing are all using what they say they're supposed to be using.
No.
So it's kind of fun when this happens. It's kind of sad that it takes a station being shut down for it to happen. But for the DXers out there, it's always kind of fun when something changes like this and a station and a frequency opens up. On the other side of the coin, though, we talked more about WCBS and the changes taking place at that all-news radio station in New York. The fallout of that decision is humongous online. There are people all over the place, articles being written about it, postings. There's a nostalgia site a website about WCBS, all sorts of comments. I saw one Twitter X account of one of the announcers at the station had something like 34 pages worth of comments coming in from people disappointed about what's going to happen to WCBS.
We talked about how we don't know how many people are listening in general on the radio, but it takes something like that to finally have people reacting. And I think the amount of comments shows that that station, a lot of people were relying on it and listening to it. It definitely was the dominant station all across the East Coast. And it's still something I have a hard time understanding that you're changing that format. A lot of people were talking about WINS on 1010. The problem with that is we talked about it here. It's almost impossible. Most of the time, it's CFRB is dominating. And if it's not, it's just mixing up. So it's like you're losing something. And some made comments about, WINS is a nice news stock. It ain't WCBS, though. So, and we talked about how the format is so unique and that it is probably what made it popular. It's the fact that, you can just tune in. It's like one of those cable 24-hour news channels. It's like you tune in for just a little bit to get up to date with what's happening. And, at what time you can listen for this or that report. And then, it's that's what's making it popular. You don't sit there and listen to it for 4 hours. You can just listen to 1 hour and get the whole news items that you want. And that's going to be something that is going to be missed. And like you said, I've seen so many comments about people being sad, even some saying, well, maybe if we all write in, it's going to change. It's like, these are commercial decisions. These are, you want to sell the station, you decided to get rid of it. There's no going back to something like that, unfortunately. And once again, WFAN was there for sports. Why do we need another sports station in New York?
Yeah, I think there's another one as well. So I think this might be a third all-sports station for the New York market. And that one having WCBS, which is going to be changing its call letters as well, by the way, is going to be ESPN. Now, if you go across the medium wave band at night, you hear ESPN all over the place. With a 50 kilowatt station out of New York that has incredible coverage in North America, there's going to be so many frequencies with the same programming on them. It's it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it comes down to business and
Yep.
money and transferring ownership and what have you. So I guess we should repeat the special programming that's going to be coming up from WCBS as they mark their closure.
Yeah, it's coming up on the 22nd, which is Thursday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's going to be kind of a recap, a history of WCBS from its beginnings to today.
That'll be really worth listening to, I'm sure. And then the final broadcast is coming up. You're going to try and record the last hour of WCBS.
Yep, I will record the last hour of WCBS, and it's coming up on the 26th at midnight and 1 minute, which means I guess the last hour is from 11 p.m. to midnight on the 25th. So this is going to be something I'm going to record so we can keep a little bit of history of what it was. I tuned yesterday. I was testing a little portable radio, and I tuned on 880 yesterday. It was a Mets game, and I thought to myself, well, this is what it's going to sound like all the time.
That's right. Yeah. All sports coming at you. We'll see. It's going to be kind of sad. At least they're going to mark the occasion.
Yeah.
Unlike we said with CHML in Hamilton, they just pulled the plug. There was no big fanfare, nothing to sort of mark the occasion of the history of the station or whatever. It was just bang and it was gone.
The worst part is apparently the announcers of the afternoon that were going there that were preparing their shows.
That's right.
And they didn't say anything. It's just like, oh, we're pulling the plug. Bye-bye.
Very, very strange.
Yep.
There is a story going around. We'll get the details for next week's regular International Radio Report. There are 3 Ontario stations that have a new owner, and they're changing formats. They're going to be coming back on with new formats. So I don't have all that info in front of me right now, but we'll get that on the show on next Sunday to give you what's happening with 3 stations. They're all by the same owner. I went and looked at the new web pages, and they all look exactly the same. I think there's going to be a lot of simulcasting going on, and maybe some voice tracking and what have you. But 3 Ontario-based medium wave stations that will be changing up their programming.
In the meanwhile, Montreal AM radio is a big mess and is totally uninteresting.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see something happen here, but there's always been talk of the 600 and 940 stations reactivating and doing something. They're dabbling around with a few things right now. The 600 AM station, which is using the CFQR call letters, does have some new programming, but leaves a lot to be desired. Putting podcasts on conventional radio just doesn't do it for me. They're catering to a different type of audience, and it doesn't convert to radio very well, I find.
The thing that I was thinking about was, on the Francophone side, we've got 3 FM news talk. So opening an AM news talk might be more suicidal than anything else, but there's nothing that competes with CJAD.
Right.
There should be. That could be one of the uses of the 600
Well, that was the initial plan for 600 when they first got the license, like over a decade ago, almost now, I think, was to have a competitor to CJD, the news talk station in Montreal, which has just an outrageous amount of listeners. But that never happened. So what I find interesting, though, is those 3 stations that are coming back on in Ontario, and some of those 2 of those stations that I heard on 900 are playing, actually 3. 2 are playing classic rock, and the 3rd one was playing oldies. Yeah. It's almost like they're going back to like the 60s and 70s where, top 40 music on the radio on AM. And I know some people said, oh, you can't put music on AM. Well, that's the way I listened to music in the 60s and 70s on AM. That's the way it was. The FM stations were doing, out of the ordinary stuff. Now it's kind of reversed. But I think there might be, an opportunity for somebody to put some. I know that's what those two stations in Montreal, 600 and 940, are doing a lot of, is actually playing music when they don't have any programming on the air. So I don't know. It seems to be a bit of a trend with some of these stations coming back with music, and they've moved it up a couple decades. I know a couple of those stations I listened to, the classic rock. There was one that was playing 80s and 90s classic rock. Somebody was asking on our Zoom meeting on Sunday, well, what is the date frame of classic rock? The classic rock used to be 60s and early 70s. Yeah. Now I think classic rock has kind of stretched a little further and gone into the 80s and 90s. And so it kind of opens up some new possibilities, I think, for some of these radio stations. I don't think music sounds all that bad on AM. I think you'd be kind of shocked if you turned on 1570 AM now and listened to the music that's being played on there.
It's kind of oldies, but it's not necessarily oldies that, it's very Québécois, like, les classelles and things like that I'm sure our audience, except the ones in Montreal or in Quebec, nobody knows who they are.
Right.
But there's old stuff in there that, God, it's something. Sometimes I listen just for the laughter it provides.
Yeah, it's one of those quirky little things, and I'm sure there are some listeners tuned to it. Maybe a much older audience, I would think, and very nostalgia, some of the music that's being played. And I mean, they're going back. Like I've heard like stuff from the 40s and early 50s, and a lot of these lounge lizard type singers and real Quebecois style music, and it's a strange type of radio station. But they're out there and they're playing music on AM. So
it's a big mix. I mean, you can listen to Pierre Lalonde, which, by the way, for people that don't know who he was extremely popular in Quebec, especially with the young girls that were going crazy with him.
Yeah, I would put him in a class like a Tom Jones was with the women, Engelbert Humperdinck. Well, Pierre Lalonde was that sort of guy here in Quebec.
There was, I think the last time I listened, there was like a Pierre Lalonde song. Then there was a Willie Lamotte, which is country, the old style country, but francophone side of it.
Yeah, we called it Country and Western in Quebec was the name, and it's still popular. There's a huge Country and Western festival held in Quebec every year, too. It
just
draws thousands of people.
It just happened last weekend, I think. And apparently it was extremely popular. There was a lot of talk about it.
Tune around on the AM band. Give it a listen. You never know what you're going to find on AM. There's always some interesting stations, especially the little local stations that I like to listen to. I know there's one down in Plattsburgh, New York, not far from us. A lot of them hide out on these little graveyard frequencies where they only have like 1,000 watts maximum of power. But if you got some of them close to you, some ethnic stations too, the Arabic station that we have here in Montreal, if you like that Arabic music, I mean, they play some incredible stuff. Caribbean stations, Arabic stations, a lot of different ethnic communities using the AM band now. So always stuff to check out.
Absolutely.
I want to mention one listening tip. You'll have to act quickly on this one, though, for ham radio operators, or if you tune the ham bands and you're always looking to try to pick up interesting stations. 3 members of a local Montreal area amateur radio club, the West Island Amateur Radio Club, are on a de-expedition. And they are on St. Pierre and Miquelon. They're on the island of Miquelon itself. And they got a special call sign to use, Tango Oscar 8 Foxtrot Papa. They've been on for a couple weeks, I think, but they are supposed to terminate the operation on the 22nd. So that's Thursday. So if you catch our special edition here quickly, you might still have a chance to pin them down and either work them or just log them, and they are QSLing. Unfortunately, they are doing a lot of FT8 and a lot of CW,
Yeah.
very little sideband from what I've been able to see on the spotting sites. But an interesting call. St. Pierre and Miquelon, if you don't know, is a French possession, an overseas possession. There used to be an AM radio station on St. Pierre and Miquelon on 1375,
Long
I think
time.
it was.
Yeah.
RFO, Radio France Outre-mer,
Yeah.
Radio France overseas. And that was a really neat little DX catch to pick up when it was on the air. But now there's FM, I think, on the island. But right now, 3 Montreal-based ham operators running Tango Oscar 8, Foxtrot, Papa, and they're working all the different bands. So try to check them out before they leave.
I've been on their Facebook page, and they've been posting a lot of pictures. They've been also visiting. So it's kind of interesting to see all the pictures of Saint Pierre and Miquelon all around, and also their setup.
All right, we want to talk a little bit. We mentioned it earlier that a lot of new radios are coming out on the market, and we wonder who's buying them. Well, you are sort of in the business of reviewing new radios. Some of the companies have been very generous in seeing that you're very popular on YouTube with your equipment reviews and various other videos that you put up. And they've been sending you radios to test out and evaluate. So you've got a nice couple of packages in the deliveries over the last couple of weeks. Maybe we can talk a little bit about them and how they're performing.
Yeah, one of the first ones that I think is a good effort. It's kind of a first. Nobody ever did a radio like that. It's a radio that is not just AM, FM, shortwave. It also is a smart radio or an internet radio. So it has the best of both worlds. You can listen to shortwave. You can even listen to hams or utilities. It has single sideband. It has internet radio when nothing's on shortwave. I think it's a beautiful idea to have such a package. The radio is a SWLing LC90. They also have a smaller mini version, the SWLing LC90M. They're beautiful radios. They work well. They have a nice LCD screen, color LCD screen. The LC90, which is the bigger one, is pretty cool. It works well. They are able to fix some of the bugs over time because you can download firmware updates so that they fix slowly all sorts of little problems that the radio had. And of course, they're listening to a lot of what I'm saying, so they fix a lot of the problems that I mentioned. Decent radio. I mean, as time goes by, it gets better. The LC90M, the mini version, I would avoid because it's off frequency by about 3 kilohertz, which I don't understand why you do that. But the LC90, the big brother, is pretty good, and that's one radio. It's interesting to see that they're doing these radios, which are not the inexpensive ones. I mean, the LC90 goes for $249, so it caters to an audience that really wants to pay for a little more of a premium type radio, if you want. So that's one of them. That's very nice, the SWLing LC90. I've had one that is absolutely amazing, the Quodosen DX286. This is a small portable radio, a AM/FM shortwave. It does not have single sideband. What's particular about that one? It's a new series of radios that are coming out. There's others also that are now doing it. It uses the DSP chip that you find in car radios usually. And we all know that car radios tend to have, in general, good performance on AM/FM. So that performance is in the Quodosen DX286. What it is particularly good at is FM, the best FM radio I've ever had. It's just amazing. You scan the bands and you will find tons of FM stations around you that you didn't know existed. That's pretty much what happened to me. And I know that Ricky Long in Calgary when he came to Montreal, did a FM scan, and he was so excited with everything. He just actually sent me a message and said, "Wow, are you aware of all these stations we're getting?" And I think conditions are great. And I said, "Yeah, conditions are great, but the radio also is great." So all of that together is pretty amazing. It's really good, and it does well on medium wave and shortwave too. So it's this nice small little portable to have. So that's another one that I'm testing. One of the big guns that is coming, and it's Texan. Texan, they didn't, have any new radios for a little while, and when they did the Texan PL990 H501X, they had said that they were the last high-end receiver. I guess radios must be selling because they have a new high-end receiver, and it's the Texan S2200X. So I was happy to get one for testing. Great radio. It is an amazing radio. It's a big radio. If you like big radios, that is a big radio. It reminds us of the radios of the 80s when we would buy something as a big radio. It's a long wave, medium wave, FM, shortwave receiver. It is triple conversion, so it has the DSP chip is actually in a stage where it is used for its processing capabilities. So it actually is a PLL radio. So that means that, compared to all the radios today, a lot of them have muting or chuffing, as we're going to call it, when you tune around. This one does not. This one is a smooth tuning. It is very good, has several bandwidths to be used. It is sensitive, has great audio, has a nice big rotatable antenna on top of it. So for medium wave and long wave, it actually works well with that. And I've been able to listen to NAVTEX transmissions on 490 and 518 kilohertz. So it's really a general coverage. Has single sideband, works well on single sideband. It will be only available in September, and it's now priced at $372 US. It's a little expensive. They used the same case as the radio, which was the Texan S2000, and also known as the Ethon Elite 750. If you own that radio, the radio case is exactly the same. But all the internals, the electronics, are completely changed. And two ways to power it with batteries, either lithium-ion 18650s, but you can also put big D-size batteries, so you have a lot of listening time with it. Great radio, and coming out in September, so that's going to be a nice one, a nice expensive one, but it works well and does well what it does. And the last one I'd like to talk about is the, I got this only a few days ago, an XH Data D220. And it's a small little pocket portable, just like you'd see in the 80s. And actually, we had some back and forth comments on the Facebook group where we were talking about, it's as low as $8 on Amazon or $7. Even if you pay regular price on the XH Data website, it comes to $20 Canadian, which is nothing. And it is an AM, FM, shortwave, little portable. What's interesting, the FM band is actually two bands. There's the regular 88 to 108 FM, but there's also an FM2, which is 64 to 108. So for those that live in areas where there are more expansion to the FM band, like in Japan, for example, you've got that band. It's a small little DSP radio. It's inexpensive, but it ain't a piece of crap. It actually is surprising. I listened to Spain, Turkey, Slovakia, VWRMI. I listened to Romania. Posted a few videos on my channel with that. Nice. And you know what? Somebody was mentioning this actually at the price that it is, and since it works decently well, could be a perfect emergency little radio. If power goes out, it's not very expensive, but you got a little radio that you can use. And uses standard AA batteries, which is nice because you can find those everywhere. So all of those are pretty cool. And there are several places where we're going to talk about them. Some that I talked already. like in the Messenger. I did a few reviews in the CIDX Messenger. And in the September Messenger, we're going to have review of the Texan S2200X. And of course, on my YouTube channel, which is the official SWL channel on YouTube, all the links and all of that will be in the description of the video. All the reviews, the testing, listening to stations, and playing around. So, and a lot more videos coming up. So, if somebody out there is saying that radio is an old technology that nobody uses anymore, it's interesting to see that all these companies are releasing new radios.
We haven't seen a period like this in decades, with this many radios being produced by a number of different companies all at the same time. As we started off our special edition here today, who's buying these radios, and would these companies be making so many radios if they thought no one was going to buy them? Doesn't make any sense. Somebody's buying these radios and they're listening to things. And from the sound of some of the reviews, they're putting a lot of effort into some of these pieces of equipment as well. How many people are going to go and buy a, close to $400 radio today? I don't know, but they obviously thought it was worth going ahead with it. So that's really encouraging. I think it might, if the word got to some of these broadcasters that all of these radios were being put out on the market, maybe it might have had some influence on what they did with their stations. Hard to say. It might be a little bit late in the case of a number of the broadcasters, but it's just very encouraging to see all those radios coming out on the market. Gilles mentioned the equipment reviews that he's done. They're quite in depth. We've been running them in our Canadian International DX Club monthly bulletin. If you are a member, well, you know what it's all about. If you're not, the club, we use the initial CIDX, has been around since 1962. We're a general coverage club. We cover all aspects of radio, DC to daylight, we like to say. And we will pass along sample bulletins if you've never seen what we do. It's an electronic bulletin, sometimes as much as 70, 80 pages worth of information every month. Very inexpensive, $10 a year to receive it electronically. If you would like a sample copy, and a specific sample copy, June and July samples had those first two radios you mentioned, reviews in them. You can write to us, sample@cidxclub.ca. And if you specify the June or July sample, we can send that off to you. We'll have a new review, as Gilles said, in the September issue. It'll be coming up at the beginning of the month. And we'll happily send one along to you. If you've asked for samples before, though, we do keep a rule that we tend to just send one sample to each request per person. $10 isn't very much, and the amount of information you get in a year is just unbelievable. We've got so many great column editors, AM, FM, shortwave, utilities, ham radio, podcasting, station schedules, DX program listings, you name it. There's everything there. There's a great pirate column as well. We've got a book review column. We have an interesting column called Not Just Listening. It's links to YouTube videos or to movies or to books that deal with radio. So you don't have to go to a radio to get those things, but there are other ways to learn things about radio and entertain yourself. So again, it's the Canadian International DX Club, and you can get a sample bulletin, sample@cidxclub.ca. And we hope you'll become a member. Would be great to have more people. We've got it's open to everybody. You don't have to be Canadian. Anybody, anywhere is welcome to join us. We do have monthly Zoom meetings as well. We just had a great one on Sunday with a whole bunch of people from so many different locations, so much information exchanged. It's just a great group, and a lot of great information passed by people with all levels of experience too, and that's what's really nice about it, is that you can ask questions of the different column editors. You have mysteries. Some people will find a station, they don't know what it is, or a sound that they hear on the bands, and hey, guys, what is this? So there's lots of people you can tap into to help you out with things. We do have Facebook pages as well. Canadian International DX Club has a Facebook page. Our radio show, International Radio Report, with a Facebook group. And of course, Gilles, I think you should mention your YouTube channel once again, because there is so much there for people to check out.
Yep, the YouTube channel is official SWL channel, and there will be a link in the description below where you can go and visit. It's a mix of my own logs, things that I listen to. It's also radio reviews, all sorts of technical aspects, talking about antennas and not just radios and the shortwave propagation. And a lot of videos are posted every week. And of course, all the testing of the new receivers that I get. It also has a lot of information for anything that is radio, where you can even ask questions in the comments. And I'll try to make a video of something that you want to hear. We talk about SDRs, software defined receivers, and it's at 50,000, almost 50,000 subscribers right now, and something like 17 million views on the videos. So it's quite popular for what is a shortwave dedicated channel, and it's a lot of fun to check out the videos and just enjoy. I get tons of comments all the time about things people like. I posted videos the other day of just tuning around the band and commenting on every little signal, what it is and where it comes from. People just love that. And I have my monthly live show on the first Saturday of each month. We are live at 20 hours UTC, and usually runs for about 3 hours, where we just share and talk about radio. And those that contribute, well, we have also a Zoom meeting for contributions to the channel.
Sounds great. So much information out there. And I guess we can mention one thing before we wrap up, and that is the new CIDX YouTube channel.
Yep.
Because that is it's starting to populate with some really interesting stuff. Gilles, you've been taking control of this channel, and you can just explain to people what's there, and hopefully they'll go over and check it out, and maybe send along some of their own material for us. We are restricting it input to the channel right now to CIDX members, though. But you can certainly go to the channel and subscribe and take a listen to what's there.
Yeah, so we, of course, had a lot of people mention they had recordings of broadcasts, not just shortwave, radio broadcasts from, wherever, medium wave, FM, long wave, shortwave. And we decided that it could be a good idea to have a YouTube channel where we have these audio clips. And of course, with a visual of, if any QSL cards or any pictures of the stations and so on. And so we started to put up some audio clips already on the YouTube channel, which is at CIDX Club on YouTube. And we'll have more. I have actually this week, I have at least 10 or 12 to add short clips of different broadcasters and broadcasts from the past. So it's going to be kind of a mix of nostalgia with a lot of old broadcasts from stations we heard in the past, new broadcasts, all sorts of things are going to pop up in there. And we hope to eventually have a lot of videos. And, I think it's just a lot of fun to have these audio clips available where you can, just go back in time and listen to either old stuff or even brand new stations that maybe somebody has DX'd, and we add these clips. And of course, we welcome the audio clips of anybody that wants to share some of the stations with us that they've been recording maybe. And we try to keep the clips now below 5 minutes in length so that it's easier to put online. And also, you don't necessarily want to listen also to 2 hours of a station. Trying to focus on the identifications of the station IDs, and so on. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be an interesting channel as it grows.
Yeah, we want to put some historical broadcasts on there as well. I
Yeah.
know I have a lot of those types of things, recordings of stations during the Gulf War. We put up the famous Tiananmen Square China radio broadcast is there. At the time, Radio Beijing, they were called. And I know Mickey Delmage is out in Alberta. They go on a lot of de-expeditions, either out in the middle of nowhere or out to Don Moman's antenna farm, and are able to pick up some really, interesting, unique signals. And so he's going through his tons and tons and tons of recordings right now, digitizing a lot of them. And so we're getting some of those to put up as well. We have one of our members in Carl Dabelstein in Minnesota has been sending in some the last week. So we're going to start to put more on there. I've got to whip myself into shape and get some of mine digitized here. I keep promising to do it and haven't got around to it yet, but I was reading through my list of what I have, and there's some really, really interesting things there. So I do want to get to work on those. Sounds like a good winter project to go through that when it's really nasty outside, and sit and get some of these things digitized before it's too late. Anyways, we hope you enjoy this special edition of the International Radio Report. Of course, you can listen to us every week, either on the radio, if you're within range of CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. You can get us live streaming at the website ckut.ca. The archives are there as well. And also, our shows are on this YouTube channel, so you can go back and check previous shows there. We do have an X account at IRRCKUT. Not a lot of people using it, but it is out there if you want to use it. And the Facebook group is International Radio Report. Email, if you want to communicate with us, radioreport@yahoo.com is our email address. My name's Sheldon in Montreal, off the island of Montreal, Greenfield Park, Quebec. Gilles is in Saint-Michel, what do they call it? Borough, I guess.
Borough, yeah.
A borough of on the island of Montreal. And we always love to hear from our listeners. So have a great week and get us on the radio next Sunday, every Sunday, 10:30 Eastern, 14:30 UTC. That'll do it for our special edition. Thanks for tuning in and listening in. We hope to hear from you.
Bye-bye, everyone.